Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to Bet Online today and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here.
Shout out to the fam, man. Appreciate y'all. Much love. Welcome. Now, rocking with the Sports Coma with Big Q and the guys, where we have intense, entertaining, educating, and enlightening sport talk from your favorite sports fan. Was popping. Good to see you guys in this Monday live, man. Just a quick report, nothing long, just to go over a couple of the things that have been happening for the Saints on this Monday. A lot of people call it Black Monday because of firing of coaches. We had a couple of coaches that we heard about. Coach Mayo up in New England. We heard about Jaguars coach Doug Peterson. They got canned. And, there's a bunch of openings around the NFL. But in terms of what we talking about with the black and gold, man, a lot of stuff just to go over. And Fletcher Mackle tweeted this out with this graphic here, which makes it a little bit more complicated. Simple, really simplistic to kind of keep up with the candidates possibly. David Shaw, which is he's working with the Denver Broncos. This rumor that's been thrown out there, and Coach Payton, this is like a Coach Payton tie. This David Shaw was a name that Coach Payton loves. David Shaw. He respects him. Think he's one of the smartest coaches out there. He's working with the Denver Broncos. An opening with New Orleans, even though they're reporting that this is not on the horizon as of right now, but this David Shaw could be a potential candidate to be interviewed later on. But we're getting right into the start of the hiring process, and this could be somebody we hear maybe down the line come into for an interview. Aaron Glenn. This is a lot of people, the insiders saying he is the leader in terms of the Saints coaching search. Coach Glenn. Joe Brady, who is the offensive coordinator from the Buffalo Bills. Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. He had connections to the Baltimore Ravens. Former quarterback Kellen Moore, who was the offensive coordinator with Dallas, and he had a lot of positive things to happen with Philadelphia. And also offensive coordinator Mike Kafka with the Giants. These are a couple of names right now that the New Orleans Saints are looking at in terms of interviews. Now, let's take a look at this article. Shout out to John Hendricks. He did a really good job of doing a tracker, just kind of go over some of these names and kind of familiarize ourselves with some of these guys. And we know a couple of these guys from their time here. Anthony Weaver, defensive coordinator with the Dolphins, was someone very high on the GM list for the Saints. He's a former player and is one of the John Harbaugh tree. He knows what it takes to build a winner, and I expect him to be a coach somewhere after the hiring cycle. And a lot of people like Anthony Weaver. We haven't heard anything from Brian Flores, which is another favorite. Remember 4 years ago when the Saints did a coaching search, they interviewed Brian Flores, who is a very interesting potential coach. He has coaching experience with the Dolphins, and he is an excellent coordinator doing this thing. Very high IQ coach. We don't know if he will be back around in the next hiring process. We'll see. But Weaver is also a guy that's well respected. Coach Aaron Glenn, of course, one of the top tier candidates, did the thing where he had a long career as a player, came in as a secondary coach, went from that up to a defensive coordinator, and now the next step, progressive moment into being a head coach. He's looked at as the favorite for the Saints job because of the ties. These are old, simplistic minded people that's conducting this search. So they're going what they know to do. Usually, they're not people that's going to deviate. They like it's, how they believe it is to be, which is a detriment. That's why I wasn't very happy with how they conducted it and who they're conducting the coaching search, which Mickey Loomis should not be allowed to do this. But you're dealing with visionless people, can I tell you? All right, so he was a coach and player in New Orleans as well as being drafted by the Jets. So the ties and familiarity will be something that plays to Glenn advantage, and we know the Saints like that. He has to say yes to whatever job he's offered to him, and he's going in a direction that feels familiar and likely. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for the Bills. Brady and Kellen Moore were in the next tier of candidates that he previewed potential hires. Brady is also familiar with the Saints as he was in the building from 2017 to 2018 as an offensive assistant, and obviously it was a strong resume with Josh Allen in Buffalo and what he did in LSU with Joe Burrow and that talented team. He was the betting favorite at one point, but he was on a rocket ship going, high and high and high, and he's building up to possibly landing a head coach job. I don't know if it's this cycle that Joe Brady catches on, but if it's not this cycle, more than likely it probably will be the next one. Kellen Moore, been an offensive coordinator with 3 different teams, and the Eagles have obviously thrived under him. Moore is not notable. The most notable stop came with the Cowboys from 2019 to 2020. Then he had a brief stint with the Chargers, and his success or lack thereof in the postseason will rest heavily on what Moore can showcase. And of course, there's Mike Kafka, who's an assistant head coach for the offensive. He's a head coach, assistant head coach and offensive coordinator for the Giants. I know instantly everyone will get turned off by the Giants pairing, but he was with the Chiefs from 2017 to 2022, worked under Andy Reid. There's a bigger ties to places like Bears for Kafka. But again, we expect the Saints to cast a very wide net in the coaching search. And then, of course, the buzz that he gives, there's a lot of Saints. He says there's a lot the Saints have to figure out over the next few months. And the list is plentiful for whoever becomes the next head coach. Interim head coach Darren Rizzi expected to interview with the Saints next week. He was also asked whether or not other teams was asked about him interviewing. What he said, we'll find out soon. An earlier report on Monday said the Saints were going to interview David Shaw of the Broncos, only for it to be debunked later. Chiefs offensive coordinator Matt Nagy is reportedly a name to keep an eye on. Some other names to keep an eye out for during the coaching cycle with Mike Vrabel. We covered that on the previous stream. Jon Gruden's there, Pete Carroll, Jesse Minter, Kliff Kingsbury, Dan Pitcher, Brian Flores, and Bobby Slowik. Remember, Bobby Slowik is the offensive coordinator for the Texans. And there's a lot of good names in this hire, man, to be honest with you. Some of the names that I like outside of Aaron Glenn, being familiar and liking Aaron Glenn, and Anthony Weaver's another good, interesting coach as well. Brian Flores is a good one that I like, but I'm kind of looking at the offensive side of the ball. Matt Nagy's interesting too from that Andy Reid crew. Mike Vrabel is a guy that has a strong resume as a player and as a coach. Jon Gruden is probably the most Saints style pick. And I'm saying in terms of like Mickey Loomis, this type of thing, because Jon Gruden has that connection with your 50 or however many $150 million quarterback, Derek Carr. So, and if Derek Carr has a say so in the coaching search, who would you think Derek Carr? Now, Derek Carr, even though a lot of people feel like he doesn't, Derek Carr has a lot of pull there. So if you ask Derek Carr, who do you want as a coach? Who do you think he says? You just think about that. So Jon Gruden is a candidate there. Kliff Kingsbury is another interesting guy. I like Brian Flores a lot. And Bobby Slowik is another interesting name to be throwing that. So serious stuff. Pete Carroll, that is a strong name right there in the coaching search. Probably if you want to talk about the most accomplished of coaching candidates that you can look at, it's definitely Pete Carroll. He had all that success in college, came to the pros, had success with Seattle, a lot of playoff games going there, a lot of success there. Pete Carroll. How about Pete Carroll, man? He has the resume. He's a little up there in age, but Pete Carroll's a no-nonsense coach. He doesn't play that. He has a strong resume. Hey, man, Pete Carroll. We'll see how that materializes too. But Mike Vrabel, Jon Gruden is a Saints car pick. I like that. I think they would like. Pete Carroll's a strong one. Kliff Kingsbury is looking to get back there. Brian Flores, Bobby Slowik, those are interesting names to say the least. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason. It's going to be way more interesting than the in season that we've seen the last several months of pathetic style football, right? So anyway, let's move on to the next article right here from Saints Wire. Shout out to John Sigler. Hold up. The Saints don't have plans to interview David Shaw just yet. Just to drop this on you, this is perplexing. Not long after the NFL Network's Jane Slater reported that the Saints intended on meeting with former Stanford head coach David Shaw about the vacancy. New Orleans Saints football. Nick Underhill said reports that this isn't the case. Saints do not have plans to interview David Shaw at this time. That sentiment was echoed by Matthew Paris of Times-Picayune. Slater expanded on the report during the TV spot with Network. My understanding, according to two sources, informed that David Shaw, the former head coach of Stanford, will get a phone call to interview for the head coaching position. Now, why is that interesting? It's easy for Mickey Loomis to pick up the phone and call Sean Payton and ask what he thinks of Shaw. The call is expected to be placed, and then we'll see when Shaw is heading down to New Orleans interview position. Slater added. The conflicting report could mean the Saints haven't formally requested an interview yet. Shaw spent last year working as a senior personnel executive with the Broncos. It could also mean that both of the sources Slater cited in the report were misinformed. This earlier stage in the offseason has a ton of moving parts and protocols to follow, which can lead to confusion. So stay tuned. But would be a disappointment if Shaw isn't in the running after all. One of the biggest criticisms of the Saints in recent years has been Mickey Loomis' unwillingness to cast a wide net. He has his mind made up that Dennis Allen was his guy when this job became available, and it took 2 ugly years for the team to look for a real alternative to Pete Carmichael as the offensive coordinator. That pattern has not led to success. Shaw would bring exactly the kind of fresh perspective that the team needs, spurring him and others like him in favor of people Loomis already knows will be a mistake. They must be looking outside his own cycle of influence. And he's not, you can't teach an old dumbass dog new tricks, and he'll continue to do what he been doing because it's what he believes is the right thing. You can't tell this guy nothing. So like I said, we'll see how it all looks moving forward, man. But in the end, like I said, he shouldn't be in control of this. These people are just absolutely, we'll see how it ends, man. Like I said, you pinpoint the problem. This guy's the problem, but we'll see what moves the Saints will do, who they'll make up, who will be the guy. Because listen, if they're serious about looking at guys' potential, now we know the first round of guys is the guys we talked about on the screen. David Shaw maybe later, but Aaron Glenn, Brady, Weaver, Kellen Moore, and Kafka are interesting people just to talk to. But what I'm really interested in is that the next group of guys that's potentially rumored, names to look out for, guys, the Mike Vrabels, the Pete Carrolls, the Brian Floreses or the Bobby Slowiks. As a coach, as a manager or VP, you have to interview all of these guys, right? You got to interview all of these guys. You got to look at everybody. And it's just the faith in Loomis to get it right is real low. But Pete Carroll, man, a Vrabel or a Pete Carroll, I mean, the strongest, that would be phenomenal. We know Pete Carroll is wanting to get back into coaching. I don't know how Pete Carroll feels about the Saints position. But man, Pete Carroll, he's up there in age, but Pete Carroll with his resume and his football knowledge, his success, his long successful resume, man, could you imagine what Pete Carroll can do with an underperforming, undisciplined, low IQ football team like the New Orleans Saints? I mean, he could really turn them around, man. But we'll see what's going on here, man. But these are names that are rumored to be in the coaching cycle. Do the Saints reach out to these guys as well? Not just some new guys like Brady or Weaver or Kellen Moore or Kafka, but guys with experience, like head coaching experience, to try to see if you can get them. I appreciate them looking all the way around, but this is going to be interesting, man, moving forward. And also just to kind of hit at this thing as well is the transaction alert, man, just to give you a little bit of Saints reported that they have signed defensive tackle Ryder Anderson, Millard Bradford, Ben DiNucci, Josiah Izraim, Trevion Fluen, Michael Jacobson, Charlie Smith, Xavier Valladay, and Trayton Welch to reserve future contracts. Basically, the practice squad players, a lot of the practice squad players, locking them up into reserve future contracts for the upcoming season. So that's what happens after the season ends. You got to then convert them into that stage of it, and kind of lock some of those guys in for depth purposes going into 25-26 season. So it's going to be very interesting. Take a look at the coaching search, and like I said, going back to it, the Saints have already gotten it in their heads that this is the course that they want to do. I don't like the fact that they always they default to people that they know. That's what got us stuck with Dennis Allen. Aaron Glenn would be an upgrade, severe upgrade over Dennis Allen, right? Even though he has no head coaching experience, he has a great depth of playing experience. The man played like 17, 18 years or something like that. I don't know. It was a long time that Coach Glenn played. Kind of walked his way up the ranks in terms of coaching. Is a good coach. It'll be interesting to see what his offensive philosophy is as a coach. There is also the reported requirements by this guy on the screen for potential coaching candidates, if that is indeed true, about taking some coaches onto their staff. Whoever the coach is, they have to deal with $60 million in the salary cap. They got to deal with a team that is kind of riddled with all kind of issues. So, like I said, whoever the coach is, it has to be a strong coach to come in here and don't take any mess. A guy that's gonna, because you're gonna have an older team. So when you step through the door, a lot of people are gonna be expecting you to win right away because you have a lot of great players here already. You just got to get them on the same page. You got to focus on drafting well. You got to be able to find and build up these lines. These lines are not nearly where they're supposed to be. We talked about in the previous show, the interior of the offensive line need to be built up. McCoy's breaking down with multiple injuries. You might be looking at finding depth there to fortify that. The guard positions are in a disarray. Ruiz, to me, it's not all that. Lucas Patrick is obviously a backup who can't handle that full-time role. So you have to find that. Defensively speaking, interiorly speaking, even though I like Bink Saunders, Nate Shepard is not. It's just a reserve big. Brian Bresee could be developed into being a full-time starter. He needs to work on that run support. But the Saints, if I ask the Who Dat Nation, has the combination, and we've seen a couple more than a handful of years of Saunders and Shepard together. Are they better than what we had previously with David Onyemata and Shai Tuttle? If not, we need to look at fixing that. We have to build up these lines and get back to running the ball and stopping the run. Notice in these last handful of games and many parts of the season, the Saints couldn't stop the run and they couldn't get into running the ball. So all this has to be addressed, and you just want to hope that the Saints make the right move. I don't know if they interview a guy like Pete Carroll. That would make sense to me, or even a guy like Mike Vrabel, for them to interview that, because when those guys step in the door, they come in with accountability. They come in with a strong message. They come in with no nonsense approach. And I just don't know if the Saints going to do it. We just have to watch and see how they're going to play this. And it'll be very interesting, to say the least, man. But anyway, fam, listen, I'm going to be back on Tuesday stream, man. We'll go over all the latest news, notes, and items on our Tuesday broadcast. We'll go over the tape for the final week of play, the Saints and the Bucks matchup. We'll go over the film on that for our Patreon special. And also we'll cover more coaching updates, man, as we move along. So I'd like to thank you guys for chiming in this episode of the show. Please do me a service. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and by all means, feel free to share the show on your social media feed. Check out our sponsors of the platform. Give them some love. Their links in the description section below for merch and ways to support the platform to help keep us strong, to spread that good message. Anyway, that'll do it for me. Much love, and I'm holler at y'all on the flip side. Peace and Who Dat.
Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to Bet Online today and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here.